The year is 1945. World War II rages on. In the Pacific theater, the United States and Japan clash fiercely. The Japanese fight with shocking tenacity. From Pearl Harbor in 1941, the Empire of Japan initially swept aside all opposition. They conquered vast territories, establishing a brutal regime. However, the tide began to turn in 1942. The US Navy inflicted a decisive defeat at Midway. Slowly, American forces began to push back. Using its island-hopping strategy, the US seized key islands to cut off Japanese supply lines. The island of Iwo Jima soon became the stage for one of the most iconic battles of the Pacific theater. Iwo Jima would prove to be a bloody and intense struggle, with both sides refusing to give an inch. While the US Marines would prove their grit and determination, the Japanese were prepared to fight to the last man. As we get ready to charge headlong into this iconic battle, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Additionally, please share in the comments below if any of you have family members, American or Japanese, who were there at Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima, a tiny speck of volcanic rock in the vastness of the Pacific Ocean, held little intrinsic value. But for the American military planners, it was a crucial tactical advantage that could not be ignored. It lay almost directly in the path of B-29 Superfortress bombers flying from the Mariana Islands to bomb the Japanese home islands. These bombers, while capable of delivering devastating payloads, were vulnerable to Japanese fighter interception on their long flights. Capturing Iwo Jima would provide a vital link in the chain of islands that the United States was using to tighten the noose around Japan. It would give the Americans a forward base for fighter escorts to protect the B-29s and a haven for crippled bombers returning from raids over Japan. For the Japanese, Iwo Jima was more than just a strategic asset. It was a symbol of their determination to resist the American advance. As US naval forces under the command of Admiral Chester Nimitz began their preparations for the attack on Iwo Jima, Lieutenant General Kuribayashi Tadamichi, responsible for the Japanese defense of the island, prepared his troops. Though the outlook was grim for the Japanese, Kuribayashi was determined to make the Americans pay a heavy cost to take the island. Kuribayashi ordered the construction of a tunnel network beneath the island, which would serve to both protect his troops and circumvent the enemy lines. Hundreds of pillboxes, blockhouses, and gun sites were also built above ground to provide tactical points of defense. Kuribayashi increased the size of his garrison to more than 21,000 troops, all with strict orders to allow the Americans to take the beaches and advance inland before decimating them with coordinated small arms and artillery fire from covered positions. Kuribayashi even broke from the Japanese tradition, ordering his men not to engage in the suicidal banzai charges, instead focusing on maintaining cover while fighting to the death. Each man was expected to kill no fewer than 10 Americans from his defensive position. The stage was now set for a confrontation that would test the limits of human endurance and the very meaning of victory. On February 19, 1945, after months of planning and preparation, Operation Detachment commenced. An armada of 11 American warships assembled off the coast of Iwo Jima, unleashing a thunderous bombardment to soften up the Japanese defenses. For 3 days and nights, the island was pounded by naval gunfire and aerial bombardment. The Japanese, deeply entrenched in their underground fortifications, weathered the storm. Major General Harry Schmidt, in charge of marine operations, fielded a large force of primarily 3rd, 4th, and 5th Division veteran Marines, totaling almost 70,000 strong. When the first wave of American Marines landed on the beaches of Iwo Jima, they were met by large embankments of volcanic ash, which caused the troop landings to slow and become congested. Kuribayashi took advantage of this, ordering his artillery to open fire. The battle for Iwo Jima, predicted to last only a few days, had become a desperate struggle for survival. Dominating the landscape of Iwo Jima was Mount Suribachi, a dormant volcano that offered a commanding view of the entire island. The Japanese had turned Suribachi into a veritable fortress, honeycombed with tunnels and bunkers. Capturing Suribachi was crucial for the Americans, as it would deny the Japanese a key observation post and boost the morale of the Marines fighting below. The battle for Suribachi was brutal and unrelenting. The Marines, inching their way up the slopes, faced withering fire from well-concealed Japanese positions. Flamethrowers became indispensable weapons used to clear out enemy bunkers and tunnels. On February 23rd, after days of bitter fighting, a group of Marines from the 28th Regiment reached the summit of Suribachi. The Marines hoisted a small American flag on the summit. A second hoisting of a larger flag was captured in a now iconic photograph by Joe Rosenthal of the Associated Press. Despite the ferocity of the Japanese defense, the American advance continued, albeit slowly and at a terrible cost. The Marines, fighting in some of the most horrific conditions imaginable, displayed extraordinary courage and resilience. They fought their way through a labyrinth of tunnels, bunkers, and fortified positions, often engaging in hand-to-hand combat with the enemy. The Japanese troops as well fought with a bravery and determination like nothing the Marines had ever encountered. Emboldened by their love and devotion to their country and emperor, many fought to the last man, using every possible weapon at their disposal. The battle for Iwo Jima was a brutal, attritional struggle, with neither side giving an inch without a fight. The terrain, a desolate landscape of volcanic ash and rocky outcroppings, provided little cover for the advancing Marines. The Japanese, well concealed in their underground fortifications, were adept at using the terrain to their advantage. The Americans relied heavily on their superior firepower, using everything from rifles and machine guns to flamethrowers, tanks and artillery to dislodge the enemy. After weeks of some of the most ferocious fighting in the Pacific War, the island of Iwo Jima was declared secure on March 26, 1945. The victory, however, came at a terrible price. Over 6,800 American servicemen were killed in action, with another 20,000 wounded. The Japanese garrison was virtually annihilated, with over 20,000 killed and only a handful taken prisoner. The battle for Iwo Jima was a testament to the courage, tenacity, and sacrifice of both sides. The Americans had proven their willingness to fight and die for their country, overcoming incredible odds and enduring horrific conditions to achieve victory. The Japanese, though ultimately defeated, had fought with a ferocity that earned them the grudging respect of their enemies. The victory at Iwo Jima, while costly, had significant strategic implications. The Battle of Iwo Jima produced countless stories of extraordinary courage and sacrifice. Jack Lucas, a young Marine, threw himself on 2 grenades to save his comrades, earning the Medal of Honor. Ira Hayes, one of the flag raisers on Mount Suribachi, struggled throughout his life with the horrors he had witnessed. Countless acts of quiet heroism were performed by ordinary men in extraordinary circumstances. Medics risked their lives to treat the wounded under intense fire. Soldiers and Marines fought on despite overwhelming odds, driven by duty and camaraderie. The Battle of Iwo Jima left an indelible mark not only on the landscape of the island but also on the souls of those who fought there. The once pristine beaches were now scarred with craters and littered with the debris of war. The air, once filled with the sounds of nature, now carried the stench of death and decay. For the survivors, the memories of Iwo Jima would haunt them long after the guns had fallen silent. Many struggled to reconcile the horrors they had witnessed with their faith in humanity. Suffering from what we now know as post-traumatic stress disorder, these veterans would spend the rest of their lives fighting an internal battle, plagued by nightmares, flashbacks, and survivor's guilt. The battle also had a profound impact on the families of those who fought and died on that distant island. The emotional scars of Iwo Jima ran deep, a reminder of the terrible human cost of war. The Battle of Iwo Jima, while just one battle among many in the vast Pacific theater, holds a unique place in American military history. It highlighted the changing nature of warfare. The Japanese, facing overwhelming American firepower, had resorted to a defensive strategy that maximized casualties and prolonged the fighting. This approach, while ultimately unsuccessful, foreshadowed the kind of attritional warfare that would characterize later conflicts, such as the Vietnam War. Iwo Jima also underscored the critical role of logistics and technology in modern warfare. The American victory was due in no small part to the overwhelming superiority of American industrial production and technological innovation. The Battle of Iwo Jima serves as a powerful reminder of the human cost of war. It is a story of courage and sacrifice, of brutality and resilience, of the horrors that men inflict upon each other and the bonds of brotherhood that sustain them in the face of unimaginable adversity. Today, the island of Iwo Jima stands as a silent monument to the men who fought and died there. The beaches, once soaked in blood, are now peaceful. The wreckage of war has been cleared away, replaced by memorials and monuments that honor the fallen. It is our duty to remember Iwo Jima not just as a historical event, but as a symbol of the human cost of conflict. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and gained a small but significant insight into the horrors and struggles of war and the grit and determination of those who fight in it. Before you go, please take the time to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We are the Minutemen of history,